how to stay calm when you are insulted, betrayed, or slandered. But now go deeper into another angle. For example, how to transform pain into wisdom, or how calmness can be used as strength in leadership and relationships. Or do you want the second idea to be a new chapter of the series on Stoicism? A different Stoic theme, like control what you can, release what you cannot, still written in the same style, turning pain into power, the Stoic art of transforming adversity into strength. Life does not ask for your permission before it wounds you. One morning you wake up to a phone call that changes everything. A loved one is gone. Another day your company collapses despite years of sacrifice. Perhaps the person you trusted most walks away without explanation. Pain arrives uninvited, yet it stays as if it owns the house of your soul. For most people, pain becomes a chain. It hardens them into bitterness, it poisons their relationships, it steals the joy from every day that follows. But the Stoics, those old warriors of the mind, believed pain could become something else. They believed that suffering, if embraced with discipline, could be forged into strength. They believed adversity was not an enemy, but the greatest trainer of character. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, lost 8 children in infancy. Imagine that. 8 times he buried a piece of his own heart. And yet he wrote in his journal, "Do not look forward to the misfortunes of tomorrow. The same power that arms you against the present will arm you against tomorrow." In other words, the fact that you are still standing is proof you can endure. Every wound is also a witness that you are alive. Let us step into this uncomfortable but liberating truth. Pain is not something to merely survive. It is something to transform. Pain is a mirror. It shows us who we really are when the masks fall away. When everything is easy, anyone can pretend to be patient, kind, or strong. But strip a person of comfort and you see their essence. Do they crumble into self-pity or do they rise with quiet dignity? That moment is when character is forged. Epictetus, who lived as a crippled slave before becoming a teacher of Stoicism, declared, "Difficulties show what men are." Therefore, when a difficulty falls upon you, remember that God, like a trainer of wrestlers, has matched you with a rough young man. Why? So that you may become an Olympic victor. In other words, life throws you into the arena not to destroy you, but to see if you will rise. Pain is the opponent that builds your muscles. Adversity is the fire that tests the purity of your steel. Without this pressure, you remain unformed, soft, and fragile. Consider a soldier who returns from war with scars, both physical and invisible. Many drown in those scars, letting trauma dictate the rest of their lives. Yet some emerge with a deeper compassion, a sharper focus, a renewed sense of gratitude for simple moments, like holding their child's hand or tasting fresh bread. What is the difference? Not the amount of pain, but the meaning they give it. The Stoic perspective insists pain is raw material. It can become poison or it can become medicine. The choice is yours. Think of Viktor Frankl, though not a Stoic but a modern witness to suffering. As a prisoner in Nazi concentration camps, he lost his family, his freedom, his entire world. He endured hunger, humiliation, and the daily shadow of death. Yet he wrote later, "Suffering ceases to be suffering the moment it finds a meaning." This echoes Epictetus perfectly. Even in chains, even in horror, a human being can turn pain into purpose. But how does one do this in the ordinary tragedies of life? Imagine losing your job, the one you built your identity around. At first, panic and despair overwhelm you. You feel useless, discarded. Yet the Stoic Path asks you, what is truly lost? Your skills remain, your discipline remains, your capacity to learn and adapt remains. The job was never your essence, it was only a role. Roles change, but character endures. Perhaps this is the moment life is forcing you to grow beyond your comfort zone, to build something new, something more aligned with your true calling. Or consider heartbreak, the betrayal of a lover who promised eternity but gave only lies. The pain is unbearable, yes, but the Stoics would remind you, love was never about ownership. The betrayal reveals not your weakness, but their truth. You have been handed the bitter gift of clarity. From it, you can learn what loyalty truly means and how to give it wisely in the future. There is a controversy here, one that makes many uncomfortable. To say that pain can be transformed into strength sounds cruel to those who are still bleeding. They may ask, so are you saying I should be grateful for losing my child? Grateful for being betrayed? Grateful for being humiliated? No, the Stoics never denied the reality of grief. Marcus Aurelius wept for his children. Epictetus acknowledged the sting of loss. What they rejected was the idea that grief must control you forever. They refused to let tragedy become identity. This is where modern culture often clashes with Stoic thought. Today we are told to honor our wounds by centering our lives around them, by nurturing them endlessly. The Stoics would challenge that. They would say, honor your wounds by healing, by refusing to let them define you, by walking forward even when limping. To stay forever broken is not strength, it is surrender. How then do we transform pain in practice? The Stoic Toolbox offers several strategies. First, acknowledge the pain honestly. Stoicism is not denial. It never asks you to pretend you are unaffected. Cry if you must. Admit the sting, but do not confuse feeling pain with being enslaved by it. Second, separate the event from the judgment. You lost your job. That is the fact. But when you say, I am worthless without this job, that is judgment. Pain comes from judgment more than from the event itself. If you change the interpretation, you change the impact. Third, use adversity as training. Ask yourself, how can this make me stronger? If you endured betrayal, perhaps you can now discern character more wisely. If you faced failure, perhaps you can now build resilience. If you suffered loss, perhaps you can now appreciate presence more deeply. Every hardship can teach a discipline if you choose to learn. Fourth, remember impermanence. Pain convinces you it will last forever, but everything changes. The darkest night is followed by dawn. The sharpest grief softens with time. Even scars fade. Hold on long enough, and what seems unbearable today becomes part of your strength tomorrow. Stories bring these ideas to life. Take the example of Nelson Mandela. He was in prison for 27 years, stripped of freedom, humiliated daily. Most men would emerge broken, bitter, vengeful. But Mandela emerged calm, measured, even forgiving. He used his suffering as preparation for leadership, transforming his pain into a moral authority so great that it helped dismantle apartheid. Was his suffering fair? No. Was it avoidable? No. But was it wasted? Absolutely not. Or look closer in ordinary life. A mother raising her children alone after abandonment may feel the crushing weight of betrayal. Yet over years, she becomes stronger, wiser, fiercely independent. She raises children who know resilience because they watched her embody it. Her pain became the forge of their strength. She may not have chosen this path, but she walked it with dignity. That is Stoicism in practice, even if she never read a word of philosophy. There is also a paradox at the heart of transforming pain. The more you resist it, the more it consumes you. The more you embrace it as teacher, the more it dissolves. This is what the Stoics meant when they spoke of amor fati, the love of fate. To not just accept what happens, but to say, yes, even this too is part of me. When you can look at tragedy and whisper, I will use you, you disarm it. You take back the power it tried to steal. This way of thinking does not make you untouchable. You will still grieve, still bleed, still fall, but you will not be destroyed. And over time, you will notice something astonishing. The very experiences that once threatened to break you become the foundation of your strength. The insult that once enraged you now amuses you. The betrayal that once hollowed you now guides your wisdom. The loss that once shattered you now deepens your compassion. Pain transformed is not just endurance, it is alchemy. As we close, remember this: no one escapes suffering. To live is to be wounded. But you have a choice. Will your wounds remain open, festering, poisoning your soul? Or will you cauterize them with courage, turning scars into symbols of survival? The Stoics chose the second path, and so can you. When you feel pain pressing upon you, whisper to yourself, this is my training, this is my forge, this is how I become unbreakable. That is the Stoic art, not to avoid suffering, but to transform it, until the very thing that tried to crush you becomes the reason you rise. The freedom you can never lose, mastering what you can control and releasing what you cannot. Every day, people exhaust themselves fighting battles they cannot win. They curse the rain for ruining their plans. They rage at politicians for not leading as they wish. They lose sleep over what their ex-partner thinks, over what strangers whisper online, over the endless uncontrollable tides of fortune and fate. And all the while, they neglect the one battlefield where victory is always possible: their own mind. This is where the Stoics drew their line in the sand. There are things within your control and things beyond it. Confuse the two, and you suffer endlessly. Distinguish them, and you are free. Think about how much of your stress comes not from what actually happened, but from demanding that reality should have been otherwise. The flight was delayed, and instead of accepting it, you stew in anger. The deal fell through, and instead of adapting, you drown in blame. A friend disappointed you, and instead of facing it, you replay the betrayal like a broken record. Every ounce of this suffering comes from fighting battles outside your control. Epictetus, born a slave, crippled in body, yet one of the freest men in history, put it bluntly: some things are up to us and some are not. Up to us are opinion, choice, desire, aversion, in a word, whatever is our own doing. Not up to us are the body, property, reputation, office. In a word, whatever is not our own doing. This distinction may sound simple, but it is the key that unlocks an unshakable life. Imagine two people facing the same storm. One screams at the sky, cursing the thunder, furious that the rain will not stop. The other calmly finds shelter, lights a fire, and reads a book until the storm passes. Same storm, different lives. The difference lies in where they place control. The first demanded power over the weather, an impossible demand. The second accepted the limits and mastered his response. That is the Stoic way. Let's make this practical. Suppose you are passed over for a promotion at work. You cannot control the politics of the office, the favoritism of a boss, or the timing of opportunities. But what is within your control? Your preparation, your effort, your ability to improve, to seek new paths, to build value so undeniable that no one can ignore you for long. When you obsess over the part outside your control, you become bitter. When you focus on the part within, you become unstoppable. Or take relationships. You cannot control whether someone loves you back, whether they remain loyal to you, or whether they stay in your life. You cannot chain their heart, but you can control your honesty, your loyalty, the way you treat them, the dignity with which you walk away if they betray you. When you confuse the two, trying to control their feelings, you only suffer. When you master your side and release theirs, you find peace. This principle also applies to reputation. Today, with social media amplifying every opinion, people are enslaved by the fear of what others say. But the Stoics remind us, reputation is not fully yours. You cannot crawl into another's mind and force them to think well of you. What you can control is your character. And here is the paradox. Live with integrity, and reputation often follows. Chase reputation, and you lose both. Critics of this Stoic stance often protest. But if we accept what we cannot control, isn't that weakness? Isn't that giving up? No, it is not passivity, it is precision. The Stoics did not advise withdrawal from the world. Marcus Aurelius was emperor of Rome. He fought wars, administered justice, guided an empire. But he did not waste his soul demanding that fortune bend to his will. He played his part fully, but when outcomes exceeded his control, he released them without bitterness. That is not surrender, it is wisdom. Look at the modern world. People live in constant outrage, addicted to news cycles, fuming over distant events they cannot change. They trade serenity for the illusion of control. The Stoic discipline would liberate them. If you cannot control it, stop letting it rent space in your mind. If you can control it, act with courage and clarity. That is the balance. Total effort where you have power, total acceptance where you do not. History gives us stunning examples of this mindset. Take Admiral James Stockdale, an American prisoner of war in Vietnam for 7 years. Tortured, isolated, starved, he turned to Stoicism for survival. He knew he could not control whether he was beaten or how long he would remain captive. But he could control his will, his integrity, his refusal to betray his men. He later said, "I never lost faith in the end of the story. I never doubted not only that I would get out, but also that I would prevail in the end and turn the experience into the defining event of my life." He survived not by controlling fate, but by mastering himself. That is the ultimate freedom, freedom of the mind. Let's challenge ourselves. Think of one thing currently tormenting you. Perhaps it is the opinion of someone you cannot change. Perhaps it is the past which no effort can rewrite. Perhaps it is the uncertainty of the future. Now ask, is this within my control? If not, why am I bleeding over it? Why give your energy to a battle already lost? Your mind is too valuable to waste on impossibilities. The controversial truth here is that much of our misery is self-inflicted. It is not the event, but the refusal to accept our lack of control. We rage against traffic instead of adjusting our departure time. We despair over aging instead of cherishing the present moment. We demand that life be different instead of mastering life as it is. This is why the Stoics seem so radical even today. They cut through the excuses and place responsibility back where it belongs, on us. This principle also redefines success. Success is not controlling outcomes. Success is controlling effort and attitude. A Stoic may lose a battle, but if they fought with discipline and honor, they still call it victory. A Stoic may fail in business, but if they acted with integrity and learned from the setback, they still gained. In this way, Stoicism protects you from despair, because you never truly lose when you control what is yours and release what is not. This idea is both liberating and terrifying. Liberating because it frees you from endless anxiety over what you cannot control. Terrifying because it leaves no excuses. You cannot blame fate, society, or enemies for everything. You must own your choices, your discipline, your responses. If your life is in chaos, the Stoics ask first, are you mastering what is yours before complaining about what is not? So how can we practice this every day? One way is through nightly reflection, as Marcus Aurelius did. Ask yourself before bed, what today was within my control? Did I act with wisdom, courage, justice, self-discipline? And what was beyond my control? Did I release it, or did I waste my peace fighting it? Over time, this simple exercise sharpens your clarity. Another practice, when something upsets you, pause and label it. Say, this is not within my control. The moment you name it, you weaken its hold. Or say, this part is mine, that part is not. Then pour your energy only into the part that is yours. If you embrace this way of living, you discover a paradoxical freedom. You cannot control the storm, but you can control how you sail. You cannot control the insults, but you can control your dignity. You cannot control the end of life, but you can control how fully you live until it comes. Fate owns the stage, but you own your performance. That is why the Stoics, though often associated with grim endurance, were actually teachers of joy. They knew that peace is not found in bending the world to your will. It is found in aligning your will with the nature of the world. When you stop fighting the impossible, you begin to live the possible. The freedom you can never lose is the mastery of your own mind. Empires may fall, fortunes may vanish, bodies may fail, but this remains. Control what you can, release what you cannot. That is not just philosophy, that is liberation. Facing death without fear, the Stoic path to true freedom. Everyone knows they will die, but almost no one lives as if they remember it. Instead, people carry on as if tomorrow is guaranteed, as if time is endless, as if death only happens to other people. And then, when death does arrive, whether in the loss of someone we love or in the shadow of our own mortality, we are shattered, unprepared, outraged at life for daring to keep the promise it made the moment we were born. The Stoics refused to live in this delusion. To them, death was not an enemy hiding in the dark, waiting to ambush us. Death was the most honest companion of life, walking beside us from the very beginning. They argued that if you want to live with peace and freedom, you must not run from death. You must face it, contemplate it, and even make peace with it. Only then can you truly live. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome and commander of armies, wrote in his journal, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." This is not despair. It is clarity. It is a reminder that time is not a possession, but a loan. Every moment wasted in anger, in envy, in trivial distraction is a moment stolen from the only life you will ever have. Death, in the Stoic view, strips away illusion. We think wealth will protect us. Yet emperors and beggars alike lie in the same earth. We think reputation will preserve us. Yet generations pass, and even the most famous names are forgotten. We think health will last forever, yet a single accident or illness proves otherwise. Confronting death demolishes these false securities. But this destruction is a gift because it forces us to see what truly matters: the character we build, the love we give, the present we inhabit. Consider how people behave when they believe they are immortal. They postpone dreams, they delay forgiveness, they waste years in bitterness, believing they will always have later. but later is a myth. Seneca, the Roman Stoic, warned, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." He compared life to a traveler given a generous allowance of time, who nevertheless squanders it carelessly and then complains of shortage. Facing death without fear is not about obsessing over the grave. It is about urgency. It is about using time with precision and gratitude, not arrogance. Imagine if you woke up each day remembering, "This could be my last sunrise." How differently would you speak to your family, treat your work, savor your food? You would live awake, not asleep. That is the Stoic promise. But how can we actually remove fear of death? After all, fear of death is perhaps the most universal human fear. The Stoics answered in 3 ways. First, they reasoned that death is natural. Everything that begins must end. To fear death is to fear the very fabric of reality. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Death is natural as birth. It is the simple dissolution of the elements from which each living thing is composed." If you accept birth without complaint, why not accept death with the same grace? Second, they argued that death is beyond our control. You cannot command its timing or its manner. To obsess over what you cannot control is foolishness. The wise man prepares his soul, but he does not torment himself with speculation. Third, they taught that death is not evil. Pain may be evil, cowardice may be evil, injustice may be evil. But death is simply the end of sensation. To fear non-existence is like fearing the time before you were born. You did not suffer in the centuries before your birth. You will not suffer in the centuries after your death. This perspective is controversial in today's culture, which treats death as taboo. We avoid talking about it, hide the dying in hospitals, sanitize funerals into quick ceremonies. We chase youth with creams, surgeries, and desperate optimism. Yet all this avoidance only deepens our fear. The Stoics would say, "Look death in the face until it loses its terror." Practice memento mori. Remember you must die, not as a curse, but as liberation. Let us ground this in examples. Picture a man diagnosed with terminal illness. Many collapse into despair, counting down the days in bitterness. But some, inspired by Stoic thought, use the diagnosis as fuel. They say, "If I have only 6 months, let them be the best 6 months of my life." They mend broken relationships, pursue dreams they once delayed, laugh more fully, love more fiercely. Death, instead of stealing life, awakens it. Or consider the soldier who goes into battle knowing death is possible. If he trembles in fear, he is paralyzed, perhaps reckless. But if he accepts death as part of the bargain, he fights with calm courage, neither reckless nor cowardly, but prepared. Acceptance becomes his shield. Facing death also teaches us humility. We live as if the world revolves around us, but the thought of our own impermanence punctures that arrogance. In 1,000 years, even our names will be forgotten, just as we have forgotten most who lived 1,000 years before us. For some, this is depressing. For the Stoic, it is liberating. If you will not be remembered, then live for what matters now, not for the applause of history. Another liberating angle is this: death equalizes all. Kings and beggars, saints and criminals, all lie under the same soil. To remember this is to dissolve envy. Why envy another's fortune when you both share the same ultimate fate? Why cling to possessions when you cannot carry them into the grave? Remembering death reorders your values. Character rises above wealth, virtue above vanity, presence above possessions. Still, some may object, "But death takes away everything I love. How can I not fear it?" The Stoics would answer, "It does not take away the love you gave, nor the life you lived. That is already immortal in its effect." Think of a parent who dies but leaves behind children shaped by their wisdom. Think of an artist who dies but leaves behind works that touch generations. Even in obscurity, every act of kindness, every moment of courage ripples outward. Death ends your body, but not the impact of your soul. This is why the Stoics trained themselves daily in contemplation of death. Epictetus advised students to kiss their child goodnight while silently remembering, "He is mortal." Not to kill joy, but to intensify it. Knowing it could end makes the embrace richer, the presence deeper. Seneca told his friend Lucilius, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day." What a radical way to live, never postponing gratitude, forgiveness, or action. If you embrace this discipline, something remarkable happens. Fear shrinks. Death no longer stalks you as a shadow, but walks beside you as a reminder. You become harder to intimidate. Threats lose their sting. When others grovel for safety at all costs, you stand upright, knowing safety was never guaranteed. And because you do not fear death, you can finally live. Think of Socrates, not a Stoic but a Stoic hero in spirit. Condemned to death, he calmly drank the poisoned hemlock, refusing to flee. He told his weeping friends, death may be a dreamless sleep or a journey to meet others who have died. Either way, why fear it? His composure at death has inspired millions more than his survival ever could have. Today, surrounded by noise and distraction, this lesson is more urgent than ever. We scroll away our days, intoxicated by trivialities, as if time were infinite. We rage over insults, accumulate possessions, chase illusions, all while the clock ticks silently. The Stoic confrontation with death is the cure. It wakes us from the dream of immortality. It demands live now, not later. Speak the truth now, not later. Love now, not later. The ultimate paradox is this: by facing death, you remove its power. By fearing it, you die many times before you die. By accepting it, you die only once, and you live more fully in every day before that. So the next time you feel fear creep in, whisper to yourself, memento mori, remember you must die, and then smile, not with despair, but with gratitude. Because that reminder is not a threat, it is permission. Permission to live without delay, to love without hesitation, to speak without cowardice, to walk without chains. Death is the teacher. Life is the lesson. Freedom belongs to those who accept both. Discipline is true freedom. Why self-control is the greatest power. Everyone wants freedom. We dream of doing whatever we want, whenever we want, without limits, without restraint. The modern world sells this vision endlessly. Freedom as indulgence. Freedom as the absence of rules. Freedom as the right to obey every impulse. But look closer. The people who live like this, chasing every desire, following every craving, are they free? Or are they slaves to appetite, to addiction, to anger, to fear? The Stoics turned the modern definition of freedom upside down. To them, freedom was not the ability to do anything you want. Freedom was the power to master yourself. It was the ability to say no to what enslaves you, to govern your impulses rather than be governed by them. Epictetus, once an actual slave, taught his students, "No man is free who is not master of himself." This is not an abstract idea. Look at your own life. Think of the person who cannot stop scrolling, who spends hours lost in distraction. They believe they are free because no one tells them to stop, but in reality, they are chained to the screen. Think of the person who cannot control their temper, who lashes out whenever provoked. They believe they are expressing freedom, but really, they are a puppet pulled by anyone who knows how to push their buttons. Think of the person who indulges every appetite, never saying no to food, drink, pleasure. They believe they are living fully, but really, they are digging their own grave, one indulgence at a time. Freedom without discipline is not freedom at all. It is chaos, and chaos is just another form of slavery. The Stoics saw discipline as the highest form of power because it puts you beyond the reach of external control. If you can govern your desires, no one can bribe you. If you can govern your fears, no one can intimidate you. If you can govern your tongue, no one can trap you in reckless words. A disciplined soul is untouchable. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He was emperor, commanding armies and wealth, yet he knew that the only empire worth ruling was the empire within. Consider the opposite. A man may inherit a fortune, but if he cannot control his spending, he is still poor. A man may rise to high office, but if he cannot control his ambition, he is still restless and unsatisfied. A man may marry the most beautiful partner, but if he cannot control his lust, he will betray and destroy the very thing he wanted. Without discipline, success becomes poison. This is why Stoicism insists on self-command. Discipline is not punishment, it is protection. It guards you from the slavery of your lower nature. It transforms you from victim of circumstance into author of your own life. Let's test this idea in daily life. Imagine you are stuck in traffic. The undisciplined mind explodes in rage, honking, swearing, pounding the wheel, as if fury will part the cars like Moses parting the sea. But nothing changes. The disciplined mind breathes, accepts what cannot be controlled, and perhaps uses the time to listen to a book or reflect in silence. Which driver is free? The one screaming at the wheel or the one at peace? Or imagine facing temptation. You're offered an opportunity to cheat, a little dishonesty that could make you money, gain you advantage. The undisciplined mind justifies it, grabs the reward, but lives in fear of being exposed, always hungry for more. The disciplined mind refuses, not because it is easy, but because dignity is worth more than gold. Which person is free? The one enslaved to greed or the one who walks with integrity? The controversial part is this. Most people think discipline is restriction, a kind of prison. They think rules and limits are chains. The Stoics said the opposite. Lack of discipline is the true prison. Discipline is the key that opens the door. When you govern yourself, you are no longer a prisoner to moods, appetites, distractions, or fear. You walk where you choose, not where your impulses drag you. Seneca put it beautifully. To be enslaved to oneself is the heaviest of all servitudes. Think about that. If you cannot say no to yourself, then you are not free. You are your own tyrant, cracking the whip, driving yourself into ruin. Discipline frees you from that tyranny. History provides shining examples. The Stoic hero Cato the Younger, who opposed Julius Caesar, was known for his unbreakable discipline. He dressed simply, refused bribes, endured hardship with calm. Enemies could not tempt or corrupt him because he needed nothing beyond his principles. His discipline made him unbribable, untouchable. That is power. Or take Admiral James Stockdale again, a modern Stoic in practice. Imprisoned and tortured in Vietnam, he survived not because he was stronger than his captors, but because he was more disciplined in mind. He refused to betray his men, refused to surrender his dignity, controlled even his thoughts under torture. His freedom was internal and therefore indestructible. You can see this principle everywhere, even in ordinary people. The athlete who wakes up before dawn to train while others sleep, that is discipline. The student who turns off distractions to study deeply, that is discipline. The parent who holds back anger and chooses patience, that is discipline. And all of them are freer than those who live by impulse. Because discipline is not about saying no to life. It is about saying yes to the right life. It is about choosing what matters most over what feels good in the moment. It is about directing yourself toward your highest purpose rather than scattering yourself across every temptation. This lesson is more urgent today than in the time of the Stoics. Modern life is designed to exploit your lack of discipline. Social media hijacks your attention. Advertising inflames your desires. Entertainment numbs your focus. Without discipline, you are consumed by endless distraction, spending your days in trivial pursuit while your true potential rots. The modern man who lacks discipline is not free. He is a commodity, bought and sold by algorithms. The Stoic discipline is the antidote. By choosing when to engage and when to walk away, by deciding what you feed your mind and what you deny it, you reclaim your freedom from a world built to enslave it. But let us be honest, discipline is not glamorous. It is often lonely. It means early mornings, quiet refusals, invisible victories that no one applauds. It means saying no to what everyone else says yes to. But this is exactly why it is freedom, because you are no longer chained to the crowd. You no longer drift with the current. You steer your own ship. And over time, something magical happens. What began as effort becomes habit. What began as struggle becomes second nature. The disciplined life is not a life of constant strain. It is a life of flow, because you have trained yourself to walk in harmony with reason, not whim. Some may still object, but isn't discipline exhausting? Don't you miss out on fun, on spontaneity? The Stoic answer, no, you miss out on slavery. You miss out on regret. You miss out on wasted years. True spontaneity is not chasing every impulse. It is having the freedom to choose deliberately. The disciplined man can still feast, laugh, celebrate, but he does so by choice, not compulsion. He drinks, but he is not drunk. He loves, but he is not consumed. He works, but he is not owned. That balance is joy. In the end, discipline is not about rigid rules, it's about self-respect. It is looking in the mirror and knowing, I am not controlled by the world, by my body, by my impulses. I am controlled by my reason, by my principles. That knowledge brings a peace no indulgence can match. So ask yourself, are you free or are you enslaved? Do you control your habits or do they control you? Do you guide your tongue or does anger guide it for you? Do you own your desires or do they own you? The answers reveal whether you live as a master or as a servant. The Stoics believed the highest victory was mastery of the self. Empires fall, wealth fades, beauty withers, but self-command endures. If you want true freedom, stop chasing indulgence. Chase discipline. Because discipline is not the enemy of freedom. Discipline is freedom, its truest, rarest, most unbreakable form. The Stoic Way, a final reflection on freedom, strength, and the art of living. What is the purpose of philosophy, if not to teach us how to live and how to die? The Stoics knew this. They did not sit in ivory towers, writing only for scholars. They lived in palaces and prisons, in battlefields and marketplaces. They faced betrayal, pain, slander, loss, temptation, and death. And through it all, they forged a philosophy not of abstractions, but of survival. A philosophy of fire tested in the storms of life. We have walked through their lessons. We have seen how they faced insults without losing composure, betrayal without losing dignity, slander without losing peace. We have seen how they turned pain into power, how they transformed adversity into a forge for the soul. We have seen how they mastered the essential distinction, what lies within our control and what does not. We have seen how they stared death in the face until it lost its terror, and how they embraced discipline not as punishment but as the highest freedom. Now, as we close, we must ask, what unites these lessons? What thread binds them into a single fabric? It is this. The Stoics sought not to control the world, but to control themselves. And in that self-command, they found a freedom no empire could give and no tyrant could take. Think about it. Every human being faces the same storms: insult, pain, betrayal, loss, the limits of control, the certainty of death. These are universal. No wealth, no fame, no technology can spare you. But here is the question. Will you face them as a slave or as a master? A slave to anger, who rages at insults and loses dignity. A slave to pain, who collapses under suffering. A slave to the illusion of control, who wastes life fighting what cannot be changed. A slave to fear, who trembles before death and therefore never lives. A slave to impulse, who mistakes indulgence for freedom and ends up chained by desire. Or will you face them as a master? Calm, resilient, clear, unafraid, disciplined. This is the Stoic challenge. The genius of Stoicism is its simplicity. You do not need sacred rituals, temples, or priests. You need only the courage to ask yourself, is this within my control? If yes, act with all your strength and integrity. If no, release it and keep your peace. This single practice dissolves half of life's misery, but it does more than that. It turns every obstacle into training. Insults become practice in patience. Pain becomes practice in endurance. Betrayal becomes practice in wisdom. Death becomes practice in urgency. Discipline becomes practice in freedom. Life itself becomes the gymnasium of the soul, and every challenge a weight that strengthens you if you lift it with courage. This way of living is not easy. It is not glamorous. The Stoic is often misunderstood, mocked for seeming cold, mistaken for being weak. But history tells the truth. The Stoics did not hide from life. They entered it fully armed. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire while writing nightly about humility. Epictetus taught freedom while limping from a master's cruelty. Seneca advised emperors while preparing for his own death with calm. These were not men of theory alone. They lived what they taught, and in doing so, they proved its power. Modern life, with all its speed and noise, needs Stoicism more than ever. Today we are flooded with insults on social media, betrayals in business and love, slanders whispered in shadows. We suffer setbacks, losses, and disappointments. We chase control over a chaotic world and grow anxious when it slips through our fingers. We flee from the thought of death, numbing ourselves with distraction. We mistake indulgence for freedom, only to find ourselves enslaved by addiction. The Stoic answer has not changed in 2,000 years. Master yourself and you master life. Picture two people walking through the same storm of existence. One is tossed endlessly, raging, complaining, craving, fearing. The other walks with calm step, eyes clear, heart steady. The storm still rages, but it cannot touch his soul. What separates them? Not the storm, but the philosophy they live by. Here lies the final paradox. The Stoics, often accused of being pessimists, were in truth the greatest optimists. For they believe that no matter what the world took from you, wealth, reputation, comfort, even life itself, your mind remained yours. Your capacity for virtue, for dignity, for peace, for courage remained untouchable. That is not despair. That is hope in its purest form. To live this way is to live with a fire that nothing can extinguish. The insult becomes noise. The pain becomes a teacher. The betrayal becomes clarity. The loss becomes perspective. The death becomes reminder. The discipline becomes liberation. So what will you choose? To live as a slave of circumstance, forever chasing what is outside your power? Or to live as a Stoic, mastering the only kingdom that matters, yourself? Every day the choice is renewed. Every insult is a chance to stay calm. Every pain is a chance to grow stronger. Every moment of temptation is a chance to choose discipline. Every breath is a chance to remember death and therefore live fully. You do not need to be a philosopher, emperor, or sage. You need only to begin, here and now. When the next storm rises, and it will, pause, breathe, and remind yourself, this I can control, this I cannot. This I will master, this I will release. In the end, the Stoic path is not about becoming untouchable. It is about becoming unbreakable. Not about escaping life, but embracing it. Not about fearing death, but living so fully that when death comes, you can meet it with a calm nod, as an old friend finally arriving. Freedom, strength, and peace are not given. They are forged, one choice at a time, in the fire of everyday trials. That is the art of living. That is the gift of Stoicism.